wonders at this stage with Tipperary needing a bit of inspiration. Will they consider a change? Nicky English! Great goal! Oh, that's a brilliant goal, and it's brought the side right back into the match. Watch it again in replay.
Could it be payback time for Galway, or did Tipperary have another trick up their sleeves? The Cats await the winner in what is sure to be a titanic encounter in Croke Park this weekend. This is the BeanBagSports Podcast. I'm Dave O'Grady. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes by simply searching for BeanBagSports. We're delighted to be joined by Tipperary's two-time All-Ireland winner, who's got 6 All-Stars and 5 Munster titles in his back pocket. Nicky English, thanks a million for joining us on BeanBagSports.
You're welcome, Dave.
In last year's quarter-final, Nicky, Galway appeared to be cruising to victory, but Tipperary came from 6 points down. Are you expecting a bit of a backlash from Galway this weekend?
Yeah, I'm expecting it to be very close, actually, and a hard game to call, really. I think Galway are much better this year than they were last year. They're a funny team, Galway, that, you know, people talk about their lack of consistency, but it's actually from season to season that they can be inconsistent. Actually, when they get going and get up ahead of steam as they have this year, they've been pretty consistent, and they've played well, really. I thought at the time the Leinster final was not that impressive, but you know, when you see what they did to Cork after that, you have to kind of re-rate the Leinster final and see where Kilkenny have got to since. Do you know what I mean? So I expect Galway will. I don't expect them to be inconsistent. I expect they'll play well. And I expect it'll be a serious challenge for Tipp, yeah.
Joe Canning is on fire at the moment, Nicky, and it seems when he plays well, the whole team plays well. But a couple of questions remain of where he's going to play. Where would you play him on Sunday?
He'll be full forward. I wouldn't have any doubt about it that he'll be full forward for the most important part anyway. Galway, in the last game or two, they've been all switching around in the forwards. You know, they can actually play in multiple positions in the forwards, and you know, Johnny Glynn goes full forward, Donlan goes full forward, but I'd say for the majority of the game tomorrow, Joe Canning will be full forward, and probably that's where he's most dangerous. I suppose it's interesting, really. Joe Canning is a microcosm of how Galway perform, really. If they depend too much on Joe Canning, you know, then they actually can't beat Tipp. I don't think if it's just down to a Joe Canning show. But the last day against Cork, now they showed that, you know, Cathal Mannion has improved a lot this year. He's much physically stronger and playing with more confidence. Jason Flynn, they brought on a guy called Whelan the last day, young for 18. He was really, really good. And, you know, Cyril Donlan and Jonathan Glynn are really, really good ball winners. So, you know, it's more than just Joe Canning, and that's really where the problem came from in the Leinster final. You know, they were missing Flynn. Cathal Mannion didn't play very well on the day. He was replaced. So also was David Burke. And they largely fell back on high ball into Joe Canning. And, you know, nowadays teams are playing possibly just two up front. And you know, Joe Canning was well able to be snuffed out by the Kilkenny defence, even though he did get a fantastic goal. But I think they'll want more from the rest of their forwards, as opposed to, you know, just depending on Joe Canning. I mean, they can just do that anyway. He's a super player, but they'll need more from the rest of them.
But it did seem to come together for the Galway forwards in that win over Cork. I mean, it was a fantastic performance, and you know, it probably is fair to say, Nicky, that if they play like that and get it right, they're going to push Tipp all the way.
If they play like that and they get that space, Tipp won't beat them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's where you know, that's where Tipp have to be different, and I think Tipp are a lot different to Cork now. By the way, I thought Cork were very poor on that particular day, and the key to playing against Galway is not to concede that space to the Galway forwards. You know, they all like to they're all tall guys who like to, you know, to run and travel with the ball. But, you know, in the Leinster final, Kilkenny were able to cut down the space for them and not allow them travel with the ball and get open shots. And when they were able to be tied down and close down the space, then they largely reverted back to the kind of the Joe Canning show. And I say that's what Tipp will be trying to do anyway. They mightn't be successful, but if they concede the amount of space that Cork did and Dublin did to Galway, well, then there's only going to be one result. But I'd be surprised if Tipp are that naive now.
And a positive from Tipperary's point of view, Lark Corbett came on and impressed against Waterford. A lot of Tipp fans are asking the question, will he feature on Sunday from the off? It's a bit of a balancing act, I suppose, Nicky, because when you bring a player of that experience off the bench, late in a game, it really gives the team a lift. So I guess that's one for them to think about.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, the word is that Lark Corbett has been playing very, very well in training since the Munster final. Now he's not named to start tomorrow, and I'm not surprised really. Jason Ford was very good against Limerick. He did all right in the Munster final, and it was unlikely. I don't think Eamon O'Shea was going to change the forward line, and having Lark Corbett to come in is a huge boost. And with hurling teams now, really, it's the strength and the depth of the panel, really, that, it's not just a 15-man game, really. It's certainly, 20 players are used, and you need a very strong 20. So having Larry Corbett to come in is big, particularly if he's in good form, and the word is that he seems to be in very good form. And I think, importantly too, it's great to see Noel McGrath back, and I think that will be a huge motivation factor for Tipp tomorrow, that Noel is on the 26th. And I'm sure there'll be a huge cheer when Noel McGrath will come on the pitch tomorrow, and that'll be a huge boost to Tipp to see him back. And I think that will be very motivating for the rest of them to see Noel back from testicular cancer in April.
There's huge expectation, Nicky, on the Premier County. How much pressure do you think it is on them to deliver an All-Ireland? I think it's one All-Ireland crown from an incredibly talented generation, it's probably fair to say, but it's nowhere near enough, I guess, for Tipp fans. Where do you think Tipp hurling is at the moment?
I think they're very strong. Look, this is a very talented team, and I suppose when it looked at in 2010, when 5 or 6 of this team won senior and under 21 on the following Sunday, it looked like there was a clear path ahead of them that they were going to dominate. But this player did the same in 2013, and it didn't happen for them either since. Do you know what I mean? So, the future is uncertain for everyone, but I suppose at the end of the day, as talented as Tipperary are, Kilkenny are just more talented, and that's been the case over the last number of years, that Kilkenny have just had the better of Tipperary. So look, Tipp don't have to worry about Kilkenny anyway. All they have to worry about is Galway, and that's going to be challenge enough for them tomorrow. I'd say that to get over Galway is going to be a huge thing for them.
Yeah, and I don't want to be putting a bit of a downer on Galway's chances here, but we have seen, Nicky, teams in the past, they've kind of flattered to deceive after phenomenal performances. What do you think is the difference about the current crop of players who seem to have found a higher level of consistency, which you touched on earlier? What do you think is different this season?
Well, I think that the young, they introduced a good lot of younger players in over the last 12 months. You know what I mean? You have, at the back, you have Hanbury, Park Mannion, who I've been very, very impressed with. Donny Burke is a youngish player. Johnny Cohn is a young man, but he's the most experienced of the full back line now. David Burke in midfield is a good player, struggled a bit with injuries. So, they're young, Galway, and they've been... They're an interesting team. If they get off to a pretty good start in the season, as they did this year, then they can grow into it and build momentum. And that's what they've done this year. Whereas last year, you could know from the word goal last year that everything was a struggle for them. And even when they drew with Kilkenny, but really there wasn't a whole lot to the draw with Kilkenny. They were well outplayed on the day, but they got a couple of late goals created to high balls to Johnny Glynn. And actually the same against Tipperary, while, they looked, as you say earlier on, they looked like they were, going to beat Tipp. But really all they were going to beat Tipp with was kind of a rush of 2 or 3 goals by Johnny Glynn early in the second half, from high balls in. There wasn't a whole lot of method to what they were at. But from the very word go this year against Dublin in the second day in Tullamore, and they were ordinary enough the first day in Croke Park, but the second day against Dublin, they got a rhythm, they got movement into their forward line, and they seemed to have a method and know what they were about and know what they were going to do. They did the same against Laois. And they put up a very good challenge against Kilkenny, even though they did come up short on the day. And then so they once they got up and going, they create this momentum, and I think I have no fear of them not playing well tomorrow. I think they'll play well tomorrow. It's going to be, and that's going to make a huge challenge for Tipperary to beat them. I have no doubt that Galway will perform tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be a cracker. You mentioned Kilkenny, Nicky, and obviously they didn't have their best day out in Croke Park last week, but still managed to score 121 against a sweeper, which was interesting to see as well, how they would deal with it. How tough will it be for them, to approach a decider against the Cats? Because if they're going to be in a mammoth task this weekend, to come up against the Cats in an All-Ireland semi-final, it's going to be a huge mountain. I guess they won't be too focused on it. They'll be just focused on this weekend.
I know, yeah, they'll just like Tipp or Galway have enough to be worrying about now without worrying about Kilkenny. Like, I think Galway will feel, do you know what I mean, that they improved from the Leinster final, and that maybe that they got their chances in the Leinster final, and where they'd come through. Like, I think Kilkenny for me looked to be the favourites for the All-Ireland final. But I mean, another game or a day or a week is a long time in hurling. And if Galway came out tomorrow and blew Tipperary out of the water, or vice versa, and I think that you're going to need that. Whichever team is going to win tomorrow, I think, is going to need to do so impressively to actually have a chance against Kilkenny, really, or to give them a chance against Kilkenny. Because while Kilkenny, a lot of people said Kilkenny weren't great last week, but I actually thought they were very good myself, to be honest. I thought their intensity and their hunger and their desire around the middle of the field was as good as ever. And the likes of TJ Reid and Richie Hogan, I mean, they're as good a players as ever played the game, in my view, to be honest. They're absolutely brilliant. So while you have Reid and Hogan on your side, you're going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, just before I let you go, Nicky, it's going to be a cracking game, but you mentioned Richie Hogan there, and I wanted to get a Munster perspective on what Richie Hogan said about the Hurling Championship. He made the point saying he doesn't like the system at all. He actually hates it. He'd rather have a match every 2 weeks, and he was talking about this year how they've played 3 games and they're already in a All-Ireland final, whereas last year after 3 games they were in a Leinster final. So it's a bit of a stark contrast. He suggested if he had the choice, he'd love to play 6 or 7 games at least in the championship, but you don't have a choice. Where would you be on the whole restructuring debate? Has something got to give?
Well, you see, for a long time, I suppose people have said, well, maybe a Champions League type format might be the way to go. But you see, ultimately, Dave, there's really not enough of teams competitive at the moment to actually, to actually make that work either, really. You know what I mean? You'd wonder whether you'd have a lot of games that would be actually nearly pointless within that league system. It's like I was on a working group a long time ago to try and change the format of the championship, and at that stage it was only just 1 game and you were out. So the format was changed to what it is currently. I suppose the tradition in the GA is to have the provincial championships, and that's going to be hard to change those. That tradition and get rid of those provincial championships, but I suppose really the teams are putting in. See, it's gone to a different level now, and the teams are, they're training more than they're playing, and the thought struck me that some of the best games that you'll see in hurling now are actually probably internally in Thurles, or internally in Nolan Park, or internally in Salt Hill on a Tuesday and a Thursday night, and nobody lets in to see them. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, these fellas want to be playing games, and I can understand Richie Hogan and where he's coming from, to be honest with you, that, if they're playing the games, or for the player, the more games you can get, the better, and be playing every 2 weeks would be better. But to try and get to that stage now, David, it's going to take a bit of change.
It certainly will, especially with the competitive Munster Championship as well. Finally, just before I let you go, Nicky, if you were to call it, it's going to be a cracker in Croke Park, Galway, taking on Tipperary. Who do you think it's going to go to?
I actually think the Tipperary defence can limit the space for Galway, and I think in a very, very close game, I think Tipp will just about sneak through, because the skill of Dwyer and Callanan and lads like that at the other side would just be able to get them over the line, I think, but not by much.
Well, we hope you enjoy it this weekend. Nicky English, thanks a million for joining us on the BeanBagSports Podcast.
Thank you very much, Dave. Pleasure.